Habari gani, karibuni na asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. That is, how are you doing? Habari is news in Swahili, Kiubuntu. What is the news, essentially? Karibuni, welcome, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. Thank you for being with us. That is our language of unity. So today, again, the name is Nduku. I am the host on Kumbukeni. Today, the topic is Empowering Africa, Restoring Fertility Knowledge to Protect Our Families and Posterity, our future generations, right? And I am very happy to have our guest today. I'm honestly looking forward to what he's going to share, because I know even I will be learning a lot, and because I want to implement the solutions that he has in my motherland, in my country, with my people, but also here where I reside currently. So I will let our guest introduce himself. Karibu, Daktari Wahome.
Thank you very much, Nduku. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And greetings to everyone, wherever you might be. My name is Wahome Ngare. I am an obstetrician gynecologist practicing in Nairobi. And I am happy to be here to speak to you on this very important topic. I'll give you a little more detail about me when the slides go up. Let's sit back and engage and see whether we can learn and unlearn.
Asante sana. So before we begin, it's good to give context. We must place today's discussion in its proper historical context, right? The attempt to introduce, a lot of you have been seeing these posts, the attempt to introduce an 8-year contraceptive in Kenya by the Bill Gates Foundation is not an isolated event. It is part of a long history of efforts to control African reproduction. Harriet Washington has written a book, and as she explains in her book, Medical Apartheid, the so-called science of eugenics was developed by white supremacists as a way to justify the sterilization, experimentation, and population control of Black people, African people, under the banner of health, because they tell you they're helping with health and progress. Eugenics aimed to weaken our families, reduce our numbers, and secure white dominance. The intentions are also revealed in the book, The Kaiser's Holocaust. I shared both Medical Apartheid and The Kaiser's Holocaust in the comments, and I'm going to put them up on the screen as we continue with the conversation. The Kaiser's Holocaust is written by David Olusoga and Caspar Erickson. What we are witnessing today is a continuation of that same agenda repackaged in modern language. When outsiders come to our continent with long-term contraceptives, we must ask, why us? Why here? And why now? And how do we take action to counter that threat? This broadcast is not only to identify the threat, but to chart a way forward. We can complain all day about Bill Gates and make all kinds of posts. But if we don't have a way forward, then we are just complaining and doing nothing to save ourselves. By restoring our own fertility knowledge, empowering our youth with choices, and strengthening African families. That is what Dr. Wahome's presentation is going to help us do. Because the true solution lies not in resisting endlessly, like I said. We can't just be resisting, but in building a culture of wellness and self-determination that makes such foreign interventions irrelevant. We are grateful, again, Dr. Wahome, asante sana, that you, a Kenyan medical doctor, as he explained, who has been addressing these issues for years. And if you can follow him on Facebook. I shared his Facebook account. I shared his medical practice to see the work that he's been doing with his team and the work that he continues to do. So we're grateful that he's joining us today. Asante sana, Dr. Wahome, karibu. Take it on.
Thank you very much. So let me just dive in and share my screen. So that's the topic that we'll be speaking about now, and it's full of important issues. It's about restoring, it's about knowledge that we already had, it's about protecting our families and the future, and it's really about the scientific basis of natural family planning, or birth spacing. Birth spacing is the term I prefer because natural family planning has too many other issues. As you can see at the bottom there are many titles that I like. I'm a child of God. I'm a Christian of Gikuyu extraction. I'm the son of Ngare and Gathoni. I'm the husband of Mercy. I'm the father to Ngare, Nyinge, Gathoni, and Chichi. I'm the father-in-law to Caitlin, and I'm the grandfather to two beautiful girls called Modoni and Washera. And the family is very important to me. And then I am an obstetrician gynecologist. I had my first degree in medicine in 1991, and I did my master's in 2000. I have been married for over 30 years. I think I qualify to speak on this topic. A very special man to me here, Dr. Stephen Karanja. He's the immediate former chairman of the Kenya Catholic Doctors. I went to see Dr. Karanja, and he asked me whether I know about natural birth spacing. And I told him yes, and it doesn't work. And he asked me if I have some 20 minutes, and he'll take me through the science of natural birth spacing. And I laughed. And I told him I have 20 minutes, and I sat down, and he actually took me through what I'm going to share with you. He had taught natural birth spacing for a long time, for over 30 years, and he was getting fed up because you needed to know how to write and to read a calendar in order to chart. And he was asking, what about the woman who is illiterate? What about that woman who doesn't know how to read and write? How would they then be taught natural family planning? And he looked at everything he had learned, took only the science and simplified it. And that is what I wish to share with Africa today in honor of the memory of the late Dr. Karanja. So there are some correct and necessary attitudes we need if natural birth spacing is to work. And the first one is that the principal role of man is to protect his mate and his children and her children. This is extremely important. Men, we are losing what our God-given role is. Our God-given role is to protect the woman and her children, to make sure that we provide an environment where she feels safe, she can get her children, and that her children will be safe and that they'll be able to thrive. If you're able to do that, then you will get a mate. If you're not able to do that, you will never get a mate, or they'll keep running away. Now, both men and women also have to believe that they can live without sexual intercourse. However, humanity cannot survive without sexual intercourse, and this is very important. So we can choose not to have sexual intercourse and live without sexual intercourse, but humanity would not survive without sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse is designed for procreation, and pleasure is the inducement. Again, very, very important, especially for our younger generation. Sex has been taught or presented as if it were for fun, as if it is for pleasure, and then pregnancy or procreation is a bad side effect of sex for pleasure.
Hold on, Dr. Wahome. Just go back to where you were talking about living without sexual intercourse. I think my internet was disrupted, so just in case it affected everyone. So
okay.
The point where you talked about we can live without sexual intercourse, but we need it to procreate.
Yes, so sorry about that. Let me see if we could go back a bit. So this is what I was saying. Both men and women can live without sexual intercourse. So it is possible to live without sexual intercourse. But humanity cannot survive without sexual intercourse because of procreation. How then would we get children? How would we be able to propagate? And then that sexual intercourse was designed for procreation, and pleasure is an inducement. So if sex was painful, nobody would have sex. But the principal role is mating, is getting young ones, is getting children. And the pleasure is an inducement. Now, if we get that upside down, and we think that sex is for pleasure like it is being run out there in the movies and in music, sex is for pleasure, then pregnancy becomes a bad side effect of sex for pleasure, and we have our world upside down. So it really is almost idiotic when you see full-grown adults talking about they are pregnant and they are shocked. And when you ask them if they had sexual intercourse, they say yes. So if we understand sexual intercourse by nature was designed for procreation and pleasure was the inducement, then it can be for both, but you cannot claim surprise or shock when pregnancy occurs. The other thing that is important in the attitude is that to get the best outcome, the man and woman need to work as a team. So you only need to understand one woman and not the whole village. And you only need to understand one man and not the whole village. So that if natural birth spacing is to work, then the man and the woman need to work together as a team, preferably in a family context. Then sexual intercourse must remain consensual. Again, it may sound obvious, but it is important that we learn that we ask nicely, and sometimes we are given, sometimes we are not, and we must not use force. So it must remain consensual if natural birth spacing is to work. And it is true, it's possible to have rape in marriage. So it's again important we keep that in mind. The other one is that women have the final word on fertility. If your woman says she may be fertile or she's not sure about her fertility and the baby is still small, it is better to wait. And then finally is that fertility must be respected. So once a woman knows she's fertile, any hanky-panky would lead to pregnancy. And I'll tell you that women have gotten pregnant without sexual intercourse. And when I tell people this, they get surprised. But if a woman has the mucus of fertility, which we shall describe, and her underclothes are wet with that mucus, and she allows a man to play between her legs and he ejaculates, that mucus will actually carry the sperm all the way to the egg and she'll get pregnant. And she will swear how she never had sex and will just laugh at her. So, about cultural knowledge, our people have always known about fertility. And if you are an animal farmer or you are a pastoralist or you've ever had to look after animals in the African context, you would know that you have been trained to be able to identify the fertility of the animals. So the main sign is that if you notice clear mucus coming from the birth passage of the animal, you know that it is indicating fertility is coming, and you need to get that bull or the AI guy to come within 12 hours. And if you miss, then that is the end of that cycle. You have to wait another 21 days, at least for cattle. And it is also true that humans knew about their fertility the same way they knew about their animals. And they use that knowledge to space their children. In fact, in some communities, it was taboo for a woman to get a baby before the other child was at least 3 or 4 years old. So how did they do it? This knowledge is known to the Pokot people of Kenya. This knowledge is known to the Turkana people. This knowledge was also known to our Agikuyu people. Now, you'll find that my grandmother had 7 children, and the co-wives would have had 4 or 5, maybe 6. Majority of them, the one with the most children would have 7. But then our mothers ended up with 11 or 12 or 13 children. And the question then is, what did my grandmother know that my mother did not know? And when Dr. Karanja did his research amongst the Agikuyu people, he discovered that when education was brought to the continent, then the issue was you couldn't be an African and be a Christian at the same time. You had to choose one or the other. And therefore, If you went through the rites of passage, or what was called then circumcision, which was then called female genital mutilation, then you wouldn't be taken to school because you're no longer Christian. And unfortunately, that is where the fertility education was taught to the girl child. So any person who missed the rites of passage so as to go to school then missed those lessons. Now, it was not necessary to throw the baby and the bathwater. So where FGM, or female genital mutilation, is a problem, then it could have been avoided, but the curriculum could have been retained. But because it was thrown out, that is how we lost the knowledge. Now we quickly go into the biology. Basic biology, important facts that one would need to know in order to understand natural birth spacing. So this is the uterus. You can see these are the ovaries, these are the fallopian tubes, and down here we have the vagina. The cervix is the mouth of the uterus, which is where the passage that would allow the periods to come through, or the sperm to go in at the time of sexual intercourse. So these are some of the basic important facts that we would need to know. Number one is that the birth passage is acidic in its natural state. Now, this space in here, which we call the endometrial cavity, where the baby grows, is completely sterile and no bacteria should come in here, otherwise a woman would get very sick. But the birth passage has a lot of bacteria. And when we have sexual intercourse, we don't sanitize. And then the vagina is very close to the birth passage, which means then bacteria would get into the birth passage. How come women do not get sick? It's because this acid will not allow the wrong type of bacteria to grow. It is produced by a special type of bacteria called lactobacillus, and it is therefore protective to the woman. The thing about this acid is that, unfortunately, it also kills sperm in about 10 minutes. So if a woman has an acidic environment in the birth passage, then the sperm will die in 10 minutes. So keep that information in mind because it's very important. Now the egg, or the ovum, when it is released during ovulation, it is alive for only 1 day. So 18 to 24 hours and it is dead. If it is not fertilized the day it is released, then pregnancy would not happen. So the question then is, if the vagina is acidic and the sperm is dead and the egg is released, how then would the woman conceive a baby? So the way God solved that problem is that he created mucus that appears mid-cycle in the woman. So the woman experiences a second wetness that is not her periods. And she can feel a flow of something coming through the birth passage and a wetness in the labia of the vagina. And if she touches that mucus, it's very, very slippery. It looks like egg white and it stretches between the fingers. And as they go by, it becomes more watery, more slippery, and even more stretchy between the fingers. That mucus is actually alkaline, which means it is the opposite of the acid. And therefore, its first business is to destroy all the acid before the egg is released. So this mucus becomes a very, very important scientific sign that the woman is fertile, that her egg is about to be released. So it comes before the egg is released. And that mucus also allows the sperm to live inside of the woman for another 3 to 5 days. So in the cervix, there are little pockets that would then keep the sperm alive. They are fed and they are entertained. They are kept very happy. Immediately, that egg is released in the ovary in ovulation. The mucus aligns into channels that quickly carry the sperm to the egg in a very short while. So this mucus keeps the sperm alive for 3 to 5 days, is again another thing that we need to keep in mind as we go along. The other thing that is important is that that mucus may be present for 1, 2, or 3 days in different women in different cycles. So one must be aware of how many days of mucus they have every month. So it's not predictable. You just know what has happened this month, and you wait next month and see what will happen. Now, 1 day of mucus would mean that the woman would notice the wetness maybe at noon on a certain day. When she goes to sleep, she still has that wetness. She wakes up in the morning, she still has the wetness. By the next day, about noon, it disappears. That's what we call 1 day of mucus. So it's not similar to the wetness that one would experience during arousal. That one only lasts for about an hour or so, and it goes away. This one would persist at least for 24 hours, if not more. Again, once the mucus stops being produced, there is no push from above. The woman would feel dry. But there is still a lot of mucus within the birth passage that is not yet absorbed. It takes another 3 days without wetness, without the woman experiencing wetness, before the acid can be reestablished. So if the woman wants to know how long she is fertile, then she must add 3 dry days after the end of the mucus to determine the duration of her fertility. So the month that she has wetness of the mucus for only 1 day, then plus the 3 dry days after the mucus is over, that month she's fertile for 4 days. If she experiences her mucus for 2 days, then she's still fertile for another 3 dry days after the end of the mucus. So that month she's fertile for a total of 5 days. And if she's fertile for 3 days, the mucus is there for 3 days, then plus the 3 dry days after the end of the mucus, that month she'll be fertile for 6 days. So we do not need to understand any other science. This is all that we need to know in order to apply that knowledge to space or to get our children. So what we will then discuss is the fertility cycle. So that's what I prefer to call it. Because when we call it the menstrual cycle, it focuses on the bleeding and avoids what is most important, which is the mucus of fertility. So let's call it the fertility cycle. So the woman has been given a fertility cycle. Every 3 to 4 days in the month, she has an opportunity with which to give us new life. That is the focus of the cycle. The menses only say that you did not get pregnant last month. So the cycle would then start with the periods, and we consider the bleeding from the time of the flow. So if there is any spotting that happens before the periods start, the flow starts, that is considered part of the previous cycle. It is once there is a flow that requires pads that then we mark as the first day of the periods. Then there is a period after the periods, the bleeding is over, when the woman is dry, and we call that period awaiting fertility. And then she experiences the mucus for 1, 2, or 3 days. Her fertility has begun. She is still fertile for another 3 dry days after the mucus has ended. And after that, we enter a period where fertility is now over, and then the periods start again. So when we are talking to the girl child, this is what mothers must learn to teach their child, that you must recognize the period of fertility. That time when the mucus has started and the 3 days after, there are certain things that will happen to a woman that will tell her that she is fertile. There is the glowing face the women describe, no pimples, no rashes on the face, a beautiful skin complexion. You haven't put on any makeup and you look very nice in the mirror. You're very keen about how you look. You want to look nice and pretty. You want to wear something nice and sexy. You have this extra energy. You're able to do a lot of stuff. You can clean up your room. You even walk a little quicker than usual. And you're huggy, a friend greets you and you hug them instead of just greeting them. And you're easily arousable. So around that time, you may also feel extremely horny, and you're easily arousable. So we tell our girl child that you must learn to look out for this season and understand that this is your God-given season for giving us babies. And it is the greatest gift that God ever gave you as a woman. And that you must guard this gift so that you only use it that time when you are ready to have your children. We also tell her about being vulnerable, that if you're with somebody you really like in private and is a man, and you allow them to touch you, and you're in the stage of your fertility, chances are that you will say yes to sexual intercourse. So that when you see this mucus and you're dating, or you have somebody you like and you're going to meet them, it is a good idea to postpone that meeting for at least a week so that the period of fertility is over. So how do we chart the cycle? We explain to the girl child that as her menses are coming to an end, she becomes self-aware of any wetness that she may experience in the birth passage, so that she is able to notice the mucus and notice how long it has lasted. So as her periods are coming to an end, then she needs to be self-aware. It is also possible that when you go to the bathroom, before you pass urine, you can wipe yourself with tissue, because the space between the birth passage and the anus is extremely sensitive to touch. And if you pay attention, you may actually notice a wetness or that slippery sensation that tells you the mucus has come. Now, it is important to notice when the wetness of the mucus begins, and also to notice when the wetness of the mucus ends, because those are items that we shall chart. So these are the important events that a child or a girl child or a woman who wants to use her fertility awareness should know. So you mark the day of the flow of the bleeding as the beginning of the periods, and then when you wake up without any bleeding, then you mark yesterday as the last day of bleeding, which marks the end of the periods. And then you notice what we call the point of change, that point where you are dry or you had wetness that was not slippery, and you wake up and the next time you notice that wetness that is slippery, then again you mark that day as the beginning of the mucus. And then when the mucus ends and you wake up and you're dry, then you mark yesterday as the last day of the mucus. So you mark yesterday as the last day of the mucus, and then you count 3 dry days and you also mark that in your calendar, and then the next time you mark, it's the periods that have begun. So if a woman is illiterate or is not able to write or read, then all she needs to do is to be aware of what sensation she's experiencing, how long it has lasted, and then when that wetness of the mucus ends, then she would count an extra 3 dry days, and that period of fertility would be over. So these are the things that we would teach our girl child. It's important to know how your body feels like before the periods come, so that you're able to take care of the periods. And it's important to know how your body changes at the point you become fertile, so you're able to take care of your fertility. If we taught the girl child this like they were taught in the olden days, it means that by the time she's had her periods for a year or 2, she becomes an expert of her fertility, and she can foretell it the same way she foretells her periods. So if you understand the fertility cycle, then it has 3 phases. Phase 1 is from the beginning of the periods until just before the beginning of the mucus. Phase 2 is from the beginning of the mucus until the 3rd dry day. And phase 3 then is from the 4th dry day until the beginning of the periods. So if the girl child is not taught about the mucus, then it seems like the cycle has only 2 phases: bleeding, then dryness, then bleeding. But if she is taught the proper fertility cycle, then is from the beginning of the periods until the mucus, we are waiting for fertility. Then from the beginning of the mucus until the 3rd dry day, we are fertile. And from the 4th dry day until the beginning of the periods, we are fertility is over. Now, the other scientific thing that we need to talk about here is that if one is keen, they would notice that from the beginning of the mucus until the beginning of the period is a very regular 12 to 14 days. So the way we use this in learning is that when the periods start, you quickly count backwards 14 days and see whether what you marked as the beginning of your mucus was actually correct. So you use this knowledge to do an audit because it is an after event. The period start, count 14 days backwards and see whether when you thought you had the mucus of fertility actually coincides to 12 to 14 days backwards from the beginning of the periods. So this part of the cycle is very regular. But from the beginning of the mucus, the beginning of the period, to the beginning of the mucus is irregular. And this is very important scientific information, and I'll show you how it becomes relevant in a short while. Now, for a woman to become proficient, then she would need to chart her cycle for at least 4 to 6 months. So it is important that before you assume you have understood this knowledge, that you actually deliberately watch what is happening to your body for at least 4 months to 6 months, and then you'd become proficient. After that, you may not need charting, and you may still be aware of which season you're in. Now we come to this monster called the calendar or the counting method. You've heard people say that you can count and determine when you're fertile and then determine when you can have sex based on counting or the calendar. There are also some apps that are predictive. So a woman would chart that her periods have started, and then it would count and tell you when you're going to be fertile and then when you're going to get your next period. Any chart, any app that predicts doesn't allow you to say what it is you're feeling. And instead you chart the beginning of your periods and it tells you when you're going to be fertile and when the next cycle is going to begin, is not scientific. In fact, it is witchcraft. So it is this kind of misinformation that has given natural birth spacing a bad name. So let's see why it is undesirable to count or to assume that women ovulate on day 14. So assume a woman has a 28-day cycle. We have just learned that if the periods start today, if we count backwards 14 days, then that is the time ovulation would have happened. So it is backwards, not forwards. And we know that the sperm is alive in the mucus for 3 days to 5 days before ovulation, and we know for another 3 dry days she's still fertile, and that is how the app would count a 6-day window within which you'd be told you're fertile. Now, a good app or a good teacher would call this period the fertile window, and a bad app and a bad teacher will call this unsafe days. Now, let's talk about unsafe days. If we teach our women that the gift that God has given them to give us children is the time when they're unsafe, and when they don't have that gift and cannot get children is when they're safe, we have officially trained our women to consider themselves as sex objects, that they are only good for sex for pleasure, and if they get pregnant, they are very, very bad. It is a horrible way of teaching birth spacing. Let us recognize it as a fertile window. It is a gift. Then determine whether you'll use it to get babies or you will avoid it to space your children because the other one is still small. So never ever use the term safe days or unsafe days because they're insolent to womanhood. Now, when people are using this counting method, they are told after periods, you can then have sex maybe up to day 9, then you stop, you skip, and then from day 18 or 19, you can have sex until your periods. That's how counting works. But let us see why it fails. Now, if a woman is stressed, she has been sent to a different location, what people call the weather has changed my periods. It's usually stress. And if she is stressed and this month her period is going to come 1 week earlier, what happens is that her periods have just started. She has no idea that this cycle is going to be short. But in a 21-day cycle, if we count 14 days backwards, it means that that month she'll actually ovulate on day 7 and not day 14, as the calendar is telling her. So if she has sexual intercourse on day 7, assuming she can't get pregnant, she actually gets pregnant because it is not about counting. What if she's stressed and her periods are going to be late by a week? They have just started, so she doesn't know this cycle is going to be long. But in a 34-day cycle, if we count 14 days backwards, then her ovulation that month will be on day 20, not day 14. She would then have sex on day 20 because the calendar says she is not fertile, but she'll actually get pregnant because fertility does not respect the calendar. It is a natural occurrence. You're either fertile or not, you either know it or you don't. This is also typical of women who are breastfeeding. So if a woman is breastfeeding and doesn't have her periods, the one who has been taught about natural birth spacing knows that what she's waiting for to know she's fertile is the mucus. So she's waiting for her mucus, and when the mucus comes, she knows she's fertile. The baby is still small, then she would avoid sexual intercourse until fertility has passed. But if she had been taught to count and use her periods, then she's waiting for her periods to start. It is 6 months later, it is 9 months later, she still doesn't have periods. And because she's been trained to wait for periods, when her mucus comes, she overlooks it and she gets pregnant during breastfeeding. If she knew about her fertility, she would have realized it is fertility that has come. So this is really to emphasize the fact that ovulating on day 14 is a myth. It is not true. It depends on the length of the cycle, and you would only know after the periods have begun counting backwards. So the essence of this slide is to discourage you from ever counting or using days to determine whether you're fertile or not. It must be the experience and the presence of the mucus or the absence of the mucus, not the date of the calendar. So up to that point, we have learned the basics. Now we get into the space where we decide we want to have a baby or we don't want to have a baby. And there are certain important rules that we must follow. So remember that fertility is 4 to 6 days from the beginning of the mucus, the beginning of the wetness of the slippery mucus, until the 3rd dry day. Those are the days of our fertility. So if you're trying to get a baby and you live away from your husband, then it is important that you agree who will go to the other at the point at which fertility comes. So a woman, say in Nairobi, is in Kenya here, is living in Nairobi. The husband is 8 hours away in a coastal town called Mombasa. And her husband has just left this weekend. It is a Monday. Her mucus has started. By the time the fellow comes over the weekend, fertility will be over. So such a woman would then know she's fertile, takes a few days of leave, goes down to Mombasa, and she comes back pregnant. So if you want to have a baby, then it is during the time of fertility that you would have your sexual relationship. What if you want to space the children because the baby is still small, or you're not ready to get your firstborn for whatever reason? Then the period that is infertile is from the end of the mucus to the end of the period to the beginning of the mucus, and from the 4th day to the beginning of the menses. Now, it is this first part here is very dicey, and we must talk about it, because a woman can actually conceive during her periods. So you remember the short cycles that we had? If a woman has her periods for 7 days, and then that cycle is going to start in 21 days, you might find that the mucus, the beginning of the mucus, and the end of her period would actually mix so that she can actually conceive during her periods. So the time when the menses are ending as we wait for fertility is a very special period, and we must be extremely, extremely careful. And there are 4 rules that are very, very important to use. Now, they may sound funny, but they are scientific, and I'll explain them. The first 2 rules are designed to make sure that you do not have sex when you already have your mucus, but you did not know it was there. The second 2 are designed to help when there is confusion about what is happening in the vaginal secretion. So the first one is no morning sex, or no sex in the morning. And in natural birth spacing, when we say no sex, we mean no genital contact. Don't touch the genitals together. So sex happens evening only. Why? Because the woman is using the day to know whether her mucus has come or not, so that she makes her decision in the evening to know whether she is fertile or she is not. And the thing is that if by evening she had no mucus and there was no sexual intercourse, and you went to sleep, and early in the morning you feel like having sex, remember you have been lying down for 6 to 8 hours. The mucus could have come at night. The birth passage is full of mucus, and you don't know. So sex in the morning can actually get you pregnant because there is mucus and you did not know it was there. Now, can you run to the bathroom in the morning and check if there is mucus? The answer is it is not useful, because you will check and you still find that you're dry. But it is because the mucus is heavy, and it will not start flowing downwards until you have been up and about for at least 6 to 8 hours, when gravity helps to pull down that mucus. So you may notice the wetness at noon, even though the mucus was in the birth passage when you got up in the morning. So it is not a good idea to have sex in the morning. Now, the second rule is no daily sex, meaning that at least skip one night. So if you had sexual intercourse last night, the whole day you'll have secretions from the birth passage, from the sexual activity, that are very slippery, and they may be there the whole day, so that even by evening you may still experience a bit of slippery wetness. Then the question is, how would you know if your fertility had also come that day when there was the mixed mucus, the mucus from sexual intercourse? Because sexual intercourse confuses the secretion of the vagina, it is a very bad idea to have sex the second night. So skip at least a night or 2. So if you wake up the next day and the whole day you are dry, then you know what you're experiencing was from sexual intercourse. There was no mucus. But if you wake up and you're wet for a second day, it cannot be the sexual intercourse anymore. It means that your fertility has actually come. And if you're not ready to have a baby, you will need to wait until fertility is over. So that's the reason those 2 rules are important. They help you to avoid intercourse when there is mucus in the birth passage, but you are not aware of it. The second 2 are about confused signals. So if there is any bleeding, even if it's in the middle of the cycle, or it is your periods that are beginning, then you must avoid intercourse. The reason being that sometimes when ovulation happens, some of that ovulation mucus can actually be blood stained. So if you are not having periods, like you're breastfeeding, and you notice a blood stained discharge and you think it is your periods beginning, it may actually be ovulation. So anytime you notice bleeding for whatever reason, then it is best to avoid sexual intercourse until you know what is going on. And you remember we had said a woman can get pregnant if they had sex during their periods. If ovulation also happens, the cycle was going to be a short one. And then the last one is, if there is any unusual change in the vaginal secretion, you have noticed wetness, it is not blood, it is not the mucus, it is not clear what is going on, the best principle is to stop and avoid any further sexual intercourse and wait for that wetness to pass. If it passes, and you allow another 3 dry days, just like you would fertility, just in case it was fertility and you did not know. So those are the 4 rules that are very important. Now, we use those 4 rules as our periods are coming to an end, as we are waiting for the mucus to allow us to clearly identify the fertility and then decide what to do with it. And if we are not ready for a baby, we wait until the 4th dry day. It is very, very important that for the 4 to 6 months, when you are using this method to study yourself, it is very, very important that you still continue using the 4 rules, even in this stage where we say fertility is over. Because if you assume you are no longer fertile and you haven't become proficient in determining your fertile window, you may get pregnant before you're ready. So it's very important that for the first 4 to 6 months, use the rules after your periods and after the mucus. Use the rules throughout the cycle so that you don't get pregnant before you are ready for the baby. So those are the rules. And in essence, basically, we have finished our lesson. Now, there is also a possibility of choosing whether to have a baby boy or a baby girl. Now, this is only necessary if we first have the first 2 and they're boys, or the first 2 and they're girls, or the first 3 are boys, the first 3 are girls, and you feel you would want to try and see whether you could influence this. The only thing that we put as a rider is that finally, God will determine. So we could try, we may succeed up to 90%, but if you get a boy and you are trying for a girl, or if you get a girl and you're trying for a boy, it is not a mistake, it is not a bad thing. That is the gift that God felt was the right one for you. So a few basic scientific facts. So the sperm carrying the Y chromosome, which gives us a boy, moves very fast, but it dies early. The sperm that carries the X chromosome that gives us a girl is a little slower, but it lives longer. Now, the egg, we said, is alive for only 1 day. So even though you're fertile for 4 to 6 days, the egg will be alive for only 1 day. And because your period of fertility would be 4 to 6 days, this is not ovulation, sorry. The period of fertility is 4 to 6 days. But the actual date of ovulation, the release of the egg, remains God's secret. So we know you're fertile for 6 days, but we don't know exactly when the egg will be released. So let's assume a woman has 3 days of mucus. We then add 3 dry days, and we can determine that her fertile window is going to be 6 days. So is mucus plus 3 dry days. Now, if you are trying for a baby girl, then you will be having sex before the mucus using the rules that we discussed. When you notice the mucus, then you avoid having sexual intercourse and you calculate how long your fertility is. So if you get 3 days of mucus, then you know you'll be fertile for 6 days. Then the idea is to have sex on the very last day of fertility, day 6. And then we go into the fertility is over period. It doesn't matter what you do. But it is very important that you understand that during the fertile phase, you would only have sex once. Now, if the periods come, it means you didn't ovulate on day 6. So the next month, you again avoid intercourse from the beginning of the mucus, and you have sex on day 6 and day 5, sorry. Skip this other day and then continue with the rules after that. If your periods come the next month, you try on day 4 or day 3 until you miss your periods. Now, what happens then is that it is most likely that on the day you conceived was also the day the egg was released, because it's only alive for 1 day. And that gives us a 90% chance of getting a boy child. Now, if you're trying for a girl, the story is the opposite. So you notice mucus and you have sex on the first day of the mucus, and then you avoid having sex during the rest of the mucus period, the fertile window, so that you don't introduce more sperms. And the idea here is that the male sperm will have died hopefully by the time ovulation happens, it is only the female sperm that will be available, and chances are very high that you get a girl. So if the periods come the next month, you try on the second day of fertility. If they come, you try on the third day, and that will give us a 90% chance of getting a baby girl. Now, it is very important that as you are trying this, that sex only happens once during the fertile window. So you're having sex after your periods using the 4 rules. You're having sex after the fertile window using the 4 rules. But during the time of fertility, you only try once, so that we're able to take care of that. Now, that is a bonus. It would not be necessary unless you have 3 or 4 children. Women who have mucus for 2 to 3 days have a chance of getting both boys and girls. Women who have mucus for only 1 day tend to generally have boys, because by the time they notice their fertility, most of the time they are also ovulating. Now, the last one here is just an app that is very useful. It doesn't predict for you. Is developed by a group, and they call it Fertility Education and Medical Management. Is a lot of science in there, but at least the good thing about it is it doesn't predict. It also has a lot of information if you want to learn. And the idea here is that it's not just about getting pregnant. If you have periods, you have bleeding that goes all the way to bleeding without you getting any mucus, then there is something wrong with your hormones. They are not balanced. If you have irregular cycles, then your hormones are not balanced. It is important to do tests to discover what is happening. So that this knowledge of the fertility mucus is not just about getting babies or avoiding pregnancy. It is also about good health, the good health of the woman. It's very important that you know your cycle, not just for getting babies, but also to know whether your hormones are balanced and that everything is happening according to the way it should. So thank you very much. We'll stop there.
Asante sana, Dr. Wahome. The information is so helpful. I hope that all of you were all listening. If you weren't taking notes, if you joined today thinking this was just another session where you can listen in and hopefully remember, go back and watch and take notes this time, because the goal for us is to implement. And that said, I'm going to ask my first questions. Also, I will remind you all, I always forget to do this. I will remind you all to subscribe, share, and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share and share and share, so that this information can get to more people. For the viewers who are watching today, if they want to start something, Dr. Wahome, if they want to start something immediately in their villages, their towns or cities to counter these population control tactics that are going on, right? To counter the artificial, the man-made fertility solutions that are being presented to them, what is the first step you would advise them to take?
I think the first step is to go for the children. Women groups come together, listen to this clip, look at their cultural understanding of fertility, do a bit of digging of what people used to do before, what do we do for our animals, and then just take this information and teach it to the girl child. And she is to be taught to understand that this is the greatest gift that God has given her. It is precious, and that you use it only when you're ready to have that child. So it's the children we must get to. And one of the things we must fight against is this attitude that when they know they may misuse this information to have sex before they are married. Now, that is a moral question. Mm-hmm. And there are children who are being encouraged to use contraceptives because they're already having sex. And there are children who will wait until the right time before having sex. You cannot pull them all in one bag. The idea is, let them have the information, and also let us teach our children to be morally upright, so that it is important for them to make good decisions. That's what we should aim for, not to control the knowledge that they have. Now, I've also noticed that when it is taught in this manner, then womanhood becomes a beautiful thing. It's not something, you stop objectifying the woman like she's only good for sex when she doesn't get pregnant. It is really ridiculous. And the boy child must be taught that he is the protector, that he must create an environment where the women and children are safe. He cannot be the one who is abusing women and children. And these two things you find will have a very, very profound change in the attitude towards our sexuality among the children. Now, remember, Nduko, people are using those contraceptives not because they like them. They have side effects. They come to the clinic complaining of this excessive bleeding. I have a blood clot. I have this, I've had blood pressure. But they still use them. Why? Because nobody has taught them an alternative that is safe and effective. This is the whole essence of this discussion. There is something else, our people. There is something else that is wonderful. It is beautiful. It has no side effects. It's just about self-control, and it is wonderful, and you can actually space your children without having to use any contraceptives. That's what we need to do. We need to empower our people. So you can take these notes. I do not claim any. I will not have any copyright. That's where our European people have had a big challenge. They want to copyright everything. Then you must ask for permission to give this information. When will you ever reach the whole continent if everybody has to ask for permission to buy a booklet? The information is simplified to a point where anyone, even one who has not gone to school, would pay attention to how she is feeling, and she would be able to recognize which season she is in. And after that, it is the most powerful tool you'd ever give the woman. This now is true female empowerment. And my prayer is that it will eventually be taught by mother to child, that it is you, Nduko, who will teach it to your daughter when the right time comes. As her periods begin, you teach her about her periods, then you tell her to watch out for this second wetness, and you explain to her what it means and why she needs to be careful around that time. And we'll have broken this curse of contraceptives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Wahome. And for me, I will be sharing this video with my daughter, because sometimes, especially in the current way things are moving, our children don't think that we parents are wise, right? They listen to everyone else but us. And so it is easier for me to say, listen to Dr. Wahome, especially when it has doctor in front of his name, than I'm telling you this is how it's done, because Mom, you don't know anything, So that's how they see us. So I will be saying, listen to Dr. Wahome. Here is a video when you have a chance. And I also will be cutting this video into shorts, because again, unfortunately, current generation does not have the bandwidth to listen to 2 hours to even 30 minutes. So hopefully the short clips that we share on TikTok and wherever else we are will encourage them to come, or will give them a little more curiosity to come and watch the full video here. But even as I talk about me and how I'm going to go about this is a way to inform you who is listening on how you can go about sharing this information. Mm-hmm.
I'll try and put the slides together into a little booklet that is 10 pages. Just the slides the way they are, and upload them in the website, in the Facebook page, whatever, if it will help.
Yes, it will. It will. So that we can share the website. And for those of us who decide to take on the slides that you have provided to continue teaching, and thank you for allowing us to do that. And I agree with you. If we keep having copyright, we will not be able to spread the information that is necessary. So for those of us who are running...
Those who would like to take formal lessons, especially outside of the country, then the Fertility Education and Medical Management runs courses. So you can train and become a teacher of teachers. So it's a good website to visit. Here locally, the Catholic Church is beginning to bring back natural family planning. So there are teachers who are being trained. There's a lot of work going on. But
Okay.
the idea is for people to understand it is scientific and it is possible, so that they don't discount it upfront.
Thank you. And so that's a great segue to the next question. You did say that parents should be taking on this, but what practical steps can parents, schools, and communities, because this is the responsibility of all of us, not just parents, right? Because our children now spend a lot of time in schools, but what practical steps can you suggest that we take to restore fertility education as part of everyday knowledge for both men and women?
Well, you'll find that it is taught in most biology classes, but it is not taught as a fertility cycle. It's taught as a menstrual cycle. And most of the time, they will not mention the mid-cycle mucus. They will not mention fertility. It's all about just taking care of the periods and hygiene. That is short-sighted and it is criminal. What we need to teach the children in the biology class is the fertility cycle. That is what they should be taught. They should actually be taught exactly what I have taught here, that there is a period of fertility, and that is when we get our children. And they must be taught to respect that fertility as the period when we have been given the opportunity to get children, so that they don't look at it negatively. What the Bill Gates and others have done by teaching things like safe sex. Nduku, what is safe sex? If using a condom is safe sex, then we have really formalized the fact that getting children is a bad side effect of sex, isn't it? It's so
And I
destructive.
mean, when
Yeah.
you look at, not to focus on him, but when you look at Bill Gates, I think he only has 2 children. So, but
Well,
go on, 'cause there's a question that's going to address that. Go on, Dr. Wahome.
you see, what I would like to tell to those who feel the world is overpopulated, and especially Bill Gates in particular, the fact that you feel the world is overpopulated, the moral thing to do is don't get children, all right? And then the other thing you could do, and just save us a lot of trouble, is take your life. Just there are too many people, reduce the number of people by 1. That would then tell us that you're really serious about what you're preaching. But you cannot have children and you cannot continue to live and then decide African children should not be born and that African children should be destroyed in their mother's womb through induced abortion. And that you're so philanthropic that you're going to give us things to prevent our women from getting babies. We don't need that rubbish. What we need is just for our people to understand themselves and let them make their decisions. Now, I don't care if Bill Gates makes those things available. I would be very happy if they were available and nobody consumes them in Africa because they know themselves.
Thank you. And we can do that, my fellow Africans. We can do that. Just because they're available does not mean that you are obligated to use them. Just because your doctor does not have the same mindset that Dr. Wahome has and is pushing them.
And doesn't have the knowledge, Nduko. This knowledge is not taught in medical school.
There you go.
And I got to know about it after I had finished my master's and I had been practicing medicine. When you're in medical school and you ask about natural family planning, you're taught the calendar, the counting thing that I was calling witchcraft. That's what we are taught. We are not taught what I have just said. And why do you think it is removed from the medical curriculum? Mm-hmm. It is simply because it is the doctor who is in contact with the mother. Yes. And if the doctor were to know this and was to offer it to the mother together with injections and other things, the mother is most likely to choose the less invasive, less complication things. Okay. Yeah. Now, of course, we have a challenge that fertility, the reproductive health has been reduced to woman's health. That's why we are encouraging it to be looked at family health. A woman won't get pregnant alone, and a woman will not be able to space birth alone. She needs the support and the the participation of the man. So reproduction is not a woman's thing. It is a family thing. It is man and woman. Both of them must be brought to speed as to what is going on.
Asante sana. You're teaching so many lessons just through your answers without even focusing on them. So I thank you for that. So we talked about the acidic nature of the vaginal area, and that the mucus comes to when the body is intending to create child, the mucus comes and kills the acid so that the sperm, because the acid does kill the sperm, so that the sperm can make its way and survive to meet the ova. So because food is essential. Food is essential in how the body works. What foods do you recommend for us to sustain a healthy fertility cycle? And because this is family, the food is not only for the woman to consume, it's also the food the man is consuming. So what foods do you recommend for us to sustain a healthy fertility cycle?
To be honest, there would be, if we were to take a good balanced diet, less sugars, less refined carbohydrates, and herbs. There are many beautiful herbs out there that are wonderful for good health. It's difficult to run them through this, in a short while. But the idea was a good balanced diet, reduce your sugars, and then use animal fat instead of these salads that they are giving us. Is very important that we take a good balanced diet. Things like fruits, you don't need to take a whole apple alone. I mean, you can share 4 people an apple. You don't need that much. You can share 1 orange, 4 people. That way, then fruits become affordable. You don't have to do very many strange things. But just a good balanced diet, occasional herbs that are good, you find that you keep your immunity high and you hardly get sick.
And because this is family, again, we have someone in the audience who's asking if you can speak a little bit about the man's fertility and how they should ensure it is healthy so that they can be a good partner for the... I'm extending the question. They just said, what about man's fertility? But I'm saying so that they can be a good partner for the woman. Please speak more about the man's fertility.
Well, the most important thing for the man is the erection. So long as you get an erection, then it means you can deliver the sperm deep inside the woman. The sperm the production is natural. We have challenges now where we are finding children who are full-grown adults who are having normal sex, who have no sperm. Those would require some investigation to find out what is happening. But impotence would be the greatest challenge, and then lacking of sperm would be the only 2 things that would be concerned about. Now, the best way to test fertility is after one has chosen a spouse and they are trying. If you have tried, in fact, in medicine we say if you have been trying to conceive for a year of regular intercourse without getting pregnant, then we consider that couple infertile. But if you use this method, if your wife is actually getting mucus and she can identify the fertile phase, and you have relations during that fertile window for just 3 months and it doesn't happen, you don't need to wait for 1 year. Something is wrong.
I only ask this if you're comfortable to answer it. I do understand the politics going on in the world right now, so only answer if you're comfortable to answer this. Because you mentioned men not being able to have children even when they have erections, and you're noticing that a lot of them are infertile. We've heard rumors that some of the vaccinations we are taking are causing this. So with the limited research that you've done and information that you have, can you speak to that? What out there can you tell us to be cautious about consuming or taking in our bodies?
Well, there is one area of great concern I have is the vaccine that is called hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease. And when this vaccine was introduced in this country the first time, they came to medical school and they said anybody who is touching blood has risks of getting hepatitis B. Because it spread very much like HIV, blood, contaminated blood, syringes, things like that. And we were all vaccinated, and we were told if you don't take this, you will not come to the wards. So we were vaccinated. Then a few years later, we were told that now start testing women for hepatitis B. And if you find a woman who's positive, this is during pregnancy. You have a woman who's pregnant, we are doing all these other tests, include hepatitis B. And if she is positive, you test the husband. And if the husband is negative, then you vaccinate the husband so that you protect him from hepatitis B. And that is what we were taught. And therefore, for all this time, we have always tested women for hepatitis B. Then the other day, it appeared in the childhood vaccination schedule. So now we are injecting newborn children with hepatitis B vaccine. The newborn child is born to a mother who we know is hepatitis B negative. So she couldn't have transmitted it vertically like HIV from mother to child. It's not possible. She was negative. The baby will not be sexually active for many years. And for 10 years, the vaccine is no longer as effective. So a 10-year-old is still not having sex. So what I keep asking my brothers in the medical field, kindly justify for me why we are injecting newborn children with hepatitis B. And I'm yet to get an answer. Now, the reason why I'm concerned about that vaccine is that it has aluminum as an adjuvant, okay? Now, aluminum is known to be neurotoxic. Aluminum can destroy the pancreas. Aluminum can destroy the liver. Aluminum can destroy testes. Aluminum can destroy ovaries. If you just read, just Google the toxicity of aluminum to testes, toxicity of aluminum to ovaries, toxicity of aluminum to the pancreas, toxicity of the of aluminum to the liver, then one must start asking themselves, are we really serious? And then when you look at the amount of aluminum in that vaccine, and you compare it to what the FDA has approved for parenteral administration. So this is the trick, Nduko. When you look for how much aluminum is safe for human beings, most of what you'll find would be what you take orally, right? So the amount you can take orally and your body is able to deal with is much higher, right? But when you look for what is the highest amount of parental, which means you're giving it by injection, you'll be shocked at how much is normal, is acceptable, and what would be considered toxic thereafter. Now, if you look at how much aluminum is in that vaccine, and then you compare by weight of the child, and you see just how much of aluminum we're giving per kilogram body weight, it is criminal. So there are things that we must discuss when it comes to vaccination. There are major concerns, so that it is not a group of 6 people who every day they wake up, they populate the vaccine schedule. And when you ask questions, you're called names. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I've vaccinated my children, I've been vaccinated myself, but I believe that every vaccine must be considered for its merit, not generally. Every new vaccine must be considered for its merit, and then we decide what to do with that vaccine. And then the other thing that is very important is informed choice is very important, so that we know the effects of the vaccine, we know the side effects of the vaccine, and what would happen if we didn't take the vaccine. So the natural sequence of the disease in a healthy person. What's the risk if I got the disease if I am healthy. If I am healthy, what would be the risk? Because that's what you would compare against the risk of the vaccine. And then this informed decision can be, the choice can be a yes, I accept to be vaccinated, or a no, I don't want to be vaccinated. And both should be respected. That is what medical ethics teaches, that the person must make an independent decision. And parents must be allowed to make decisions for their children, right? So parental consent must be honored. And think if, Nduko, I had a patient who had a very bad cancer and only surgery would save them. And if they didn't take the surgery, they would die within the next 6 months. And I offered surgery to that patient. And they looked me in the eye and they said, "Doctor, I don't want your surgery." Do you know I can't take them to theater by force? Even though I know it would save their life, medical ethics requires that I honor their choice, right? They have made that decision. So long as they're not asking me to do something evil, they have chosen not to take treatment. I cannot force them to take treatment. Now, when you come and you tell me, there is this thing I can give you that can prevent disease, or you don't get it and you wait and see whether you get sick and how that will manage. And my body would be able to make, develop immunity against the infection if I got it. Then what you're proposing is that you want to put in something in me that will induce an infection-like state so that my body is primed for the infection. So really, you're just stimulating my immunity in advance, isn't it? Therefore, you can't make a vaccine for something that the body cannot fight. Yes? Now, if it is preventive, then it is even less important than treatment. You therefore cannot mandate a vaccine. And let's just destroy one last one. You are taking your vaccine so that you can protect others. Nduko, that lie is from the devil himself. You take a vaccine to protect you, all right? And if you are vaccinated and therefore protected from the disease, you should not care about anybody who's not vaccinated, because then you're not at risk. You're basically protected. That is what we are saying, right? Now, if somebody who is vaccinated still gets sick, then the scientific deduction is that the vaccine failed to protect them. You don't blame the person who was sick. You see, I don't know why. I mean, this is basic science. If I took a vaccine and somebody came into my office and they had the disease that I am protected against, and I got that disease, the problem is not the person who is sick who came to my office. The science is that the vaccine failed to protect me. I was conned. It was not true. It was not effective. That is the science. So you cannot take a vaccine to save another person. That is wickedness. It is not even science. It's not even medicine. So those would be the things that I would like to point out, so that we allow people to make informed choices. It is not your business, Nduko, to go around reading about the side effects of vaccines to be able to decide whether to take a vaccine or not. It is the onus is on the person who wants to give you the vaccine to demonstrate its value, and you listen and you actually understand that this is good for me, and you take the vaccine. It's not you who should go researching to see whether the vaccine is safe or effective. It is the business of the person who wants to administer it to convince you that it is safe and effective. And if you're not convinced, you have no business taking that medicine.
So please remember that, and I'm going to write it and put it up, that statement. You don't take vaccines to protect others, you take vaccines to protect yourself. And when you think about the information you gave us about the toxicity of aluminum and the fact that the logic behind vaccination taking, that it's meant to protect the individual, but the propaganda is, the messaging is, you're taking it to protect the community, right? Or you cannot come to school without vaccination because we are protecting the other children. And these people know that this is a lie. The doctors, at least. The doctors who are pushing this, forget about the teacher in class who might not be informed, because it's come down the chain, right? So they might not know what is behind these machinations, but the doctors know that it is a lie.
Yes,
the main people, including Bill Gates, pushing it, know it's a lie. This is why I started by talking about eugenics, because eugenics was intentionally done. They knew the things they were doing were harmful, and they still did them. So these doctors, these medical experts, and the ones who are not experts like Bill Gates, who have no business talking medicine or food, know that the information they are pushing is a lie. That's why it's eugenics. That's why it's genocide. That's why they, and this is me talking, not Dr. Wahome. Let's make this clear for those, because we are living in a world of lawsuits. This is Nduko Mulomba giving this opinion. This is my opinion, not Dr. Wahome's opinion. Those individuals who knowingly push these lies, knowing the toxicity of these substances to us human beings, are terrorists. That's my statement. Because when we think about what a terrorist does, terrorizing the community, terrorizing life, terrorizing our well-being, that is who we need to look at as threatening our well-being. You told us about aluminium's toxicity. And again, this is Nduku's advice, not Dr. Wahome's. This is my advice to the people listening. Given what Dr. Wahome told us about aluminium, I would say as a parent, look at the vaccinations, and anything you see with the aluminium, do not take for your child. Anything you see with aluminium, now that you know that substance is toxic to the human being's body, don't take it. Don't have your child take it. And if you have a friend who's telling you about a vaccination that you know has aluminium, tell them not to have their child take it. Send them this video. Send them Dr. Wahome's website. Send them the information out there about aluminium that they need to know. Dr. Wahome, the hepatitis B vaccine and HPV, are they different? They're not the same thing?
Yes. No, they're not the same thing. The HPV is a totally different thing.
Can you talk about HPV, please, and what benefits it has, or non-benefits?
Well, let me just state here that there is this thing about eradicating disease. When people come up, WHO comes up with a story, they want to eradicate a certain disease. Yeah. That is not medical practice. What we do in medicine is to reduce the risk of death, or to reduce preventable deaths. It's impossible to eradicate all diseases, okay? But if you talk about eradicating a disease, and then you say that vaccinating is to help everybody else, you take a vaccine to help everybody else, you have just created a narrative that gives you a very huge market. So that combination of things, we are going to eradicate it, and you're taking the vaccine to save everybody else, not just yourself. That is a marketing gimmick. It is not medical practice. Now, HPV is human papillomavirus. Human papillomavirus is sexually transmitted. Again, there are 150 different subtypes of HPV. And about maybe 4 or so would have an association with cancer of the cervix. So they would account for maybe 70% of those people who have cancer of the cervix. So the story then would be, we are going to eradicate cancer of the cervix. And we are going to eradicate cancer of the cervix by giving vaccination for HPV. So that's the story, right? So it's your business to make sure nobody gets cancer of the cervix by making sure everybody is given the HPV vaccine. Now, the HPV, like we said, is sexually transmitted. So any woman who's not sexually transmitted is not at risk of having this virus. The minute you have your first sexual intercourse, we don't know how many of the different subtypes you have received during that first intercourse. So the advice had always been, at the anniversary of your first sexual experience, you do your first pap smear, and after that you do it, WHO says, every 5 years. In our practice, we say every 2 years. Okay, so every 2 years, do your pap smear. Now, that is how America and the US and the UK were able to prevent deaths from cancer of the cervix long before HPV came in 2006. Okay, there were hardly any deaths from cancer of the cervix in the US and in the UK just because of the pap smear test. Now, for Africa, and now from 2006, the idea is to vaccinate. Now, the HPV virus, once a woman is infected with the HPV virus, 90 to 99% of the time, the cervix clears that virus without you knowing you ever had it. Are we together, Nduku? The body heals itself 90 to 99% of the time. So there is 1 to 10% of women who are not able to clear the virus from the cervix. If this virus persists, if the infection of the HPV persists in the cervix for 15 to 20 years without detection, then that woman is at risk of developing cancer of the cervix. 15 to 20 years of persistent HPV infection. And that is why the pap smear was so powerful, because the pap smear would pick up changes that would lead to cancer 8 to 10 years before the cancer develops. And a very simple treatment of the cervix would then prevent any risk of cancer of the cervix. Are we together? Now, if that is the science that we know, and we know that some strains of HPV have been associated more with cancer of the cervix, and you make a vaccine for those 2, 3 strains or 4 strains of HPV, and they cover 70% of the vaccines, the risky subtypes of HPV. It still means there is a 30% of women who would still develop HPV, will still develop cancer of the cervix, even though they have been given the HPV vaccine, isn't it? So WHO and everybody else is very clear that even if you're vaccinated against HPV, you must continue doing your pap smears regularly. All right?
Yes.
So if you know that, and I give you that information as a mother, your child is not at risk of developing HPV, cancer of the cervix. They're not at risk of contracting HPV. And if they choose that path and they start having sex, then you introduce them to the pap smear that should be done every 2 years. And if we pick up any changes that would lead to cancer, we'd be able to treat and actually prevent cancer. Or you can have her injected with this vaccine. These are the side effects. These are some of the complications we have seen with this vaccine. Now choose which of the two you would prefer. You make a decision. So for my daughter, I chose not to vaccinate her. And if she gets the age of 18 and she decides she feels it is important for her because of a certain lifestyle she's chosen, she can take herself to be vaccinated, and I'm no longer responsible for the outcome, right? But if she would prefer to do regular pap smears, then there is no reason to take the vaccine. So even when we discussed the vaccine here in this country, our position was very clear. The vaccine is unnecessary. We don't want to know whether it is safe. We don't want to know whether it is effective. If you ask for our opinion, it is not necessary. It is available. You want to take it, go ahead and take it. Just understand what the side effects are. And if you refer people to sacrificial virgins. There is a video that was done by mothers whose children were injured by that vaccine in the UK. They tried everything to get justice. I don't know whether they've succeeded or not, but they did a little clip called Sacrificial Virgins. You'd find it in Vimeo. The YouTube version was deleted, of course, just to see what has happened to some of the people. But the thing is, even without scaring anyone, just rational thinking and understanding what is before you, it is possible to make decisions about vaccines one at a time. So look at each vaccine, look at it, ask questions about its merit, tell whoever is proposing it to give you a clear indication of why they feel it is important for you to take it. And if you don't find it is justifiable, then you have a right to make a decision not to receive it. That's just how it goes. Now, when it comes to aluminium, you look at the quantity, the amount, and it will help you to see, because some people have noted that if you delay some of those vaccines for a child to grow a little bigger, if you don't give too many of them at the same time, that you space them a month apart, some of those that may be considered useful can still be given. If you look at the vaccine schedules of Japan, you look at the vaccine schedule from Finland, you look at them, you find that they are not the same. The people have staggered their vaccines. It doesn't have to be in a certain particular way. But if you take the size of the baby, the weight of the child, and then you find that some of those things can just be made safer by just delay. So it's a question of being rational and not pushing things down people's throats.
Thank you. I have two more questions and then we can wrap it up.
Yes.
So you've taught us about natural birth spacing, and I like that you gave us this term, natural birth spacing. Can you explain why this is a healthier alternative for African families? To my mother, who is going to be advising young daughters, whose young daughters are going to be advising her young grandchildren, and whose young grandchildren are going to be advising their young great-grandchildren. Please explain why this is a healthier alternative for African families.
Okay, so the alternative is the contraceptive. And the contraceptives, especially the hormonal ones, use a hormone called progesterone. Progesterone is basically the hormone of pregnancy. So when you get those injections, your body assumes you're pregnant and actually stops ovulations. That's the easiest way to understand it in lay language. Ovulation stops, or the mucus of the cervix becomes thick. It prevents the sperm from going through, or the inner lining of the uterus becomes so thin that the baby cannot implant. The thing is that you're taking hormones. And what happens is that you'll be in a pregnancy-like state for the duration of time you're on this stuff. So when you have people who are talking about mood swings and being irritable and almost a change in personality, is because the hormones will not just affect the ovaries and the uterus, they will affect everything else that is woman about you. All right? Now, there's some that are being offered to our women in Africa. There is the injection called Depo-Provera that is being given every 3 months. When used for a long time, it actually causes bone thinning. So as a woman, you're supposed to build your maximum bone density by 35 years. And then when you go to menopause, the first 5 years, you lose almost 50% of your bone strength. Now, if you do not have the right amount of bone strength by the time you're 35, because you started taking this injection from the age of 18, then it means old age becomes a big crisis of fractures, the hunching over, because the spinal thing is breaking up and you can't stand up straight. You fall in the bathroom and you break your bones because of little falls that otherwise should not cause such great damage. The other thing is that it also appears in breast milk. So if you're taking hormones and you're breastfeeding a baby, then you know they are active female hormones going to the child. And we are told they are small amounts, they are not significant, but you have a 3-kilo child who is male taking female hormones for the duration that the mother is on them while he's breastfeeding. What does this do to the child? We are conducting experiments. We'll probably know when they're 25 or 30, and they're trying to conceive. So the question is, then when you take the pill, the oral contraceptive pill, then you're talking about taking 2 hormones, estrogen and progesterone. The estrogen is put in there just to give you a cycle. So you take for 21 days, then when you stop taking it, you get a bleed. You take another 21 days, you stop for a week, you get a bleed. So the estrogen is put there to create that artificial cycle. So the woman, because when you take progesterone alone, sometimes the periods will disappear. So the estrogen is put to give that cycle. But you see, what you're getting is not menstruation, is withdrawal bleeding from the artificial hormones you've been taking. Now, estrogen can then give you a risk of blood pressure. Estrogen can give you a risk of developing blood clots and many other concerns. All right. People have depressed because these hormones will affect your moods. So some of them will actually knock off your libido. So you remember you're taking this stuff so you can have sex without getting pregnant. Now you don't feel like having sex anymore. So there are so many things to consider. Now let's talk to the African child about Postino 2, P2, the emergency contraceptive. It was designed to be used once or twice in a year in an emergency. The condom broke. I wasn't ready, and I'm not sure that I was fertile. That's the story we were given in medical school when it was introduced. Now, 1 tablet of Postino 2 is equals to hormonal strength to 25 contraceptive pills taken at the same time. By the time you take the second pill, because they're supposed to be 2, you have taken another 25, meaning in 24 hours, you have popped 50 contraceptive pills equivalent. And some of our girls in college are doing this every weekend. It is crazy. And all those risks are supposed to be told to the people who are consuming these things, but they are not being told. All right? So the thing is, the alternative of knowing yourself and making decisions as to whether to have sexual intercourse when one is fertile or to have sexual intercourse when one is not fertile would save you, the woman, so much trouble that it is incredible. It would work better if we trained the girl child to know herself long before she has to make any sexual decisions. And then we train the boy child to stop abusing women, to understand that he is a protector, that he is supposed to protect women and children and provide an environment where they can thrive. If we do those 2 things, we will not need to worry about contraceptives.
You know, you said that, and in my head, because I sometimes every now and then I have a sneaky side of me that likes to push people's buttons. In my head, I was thinking, should I ask Dr. Wahome this? Should I ask Dr. Wahome if anyone has any business having sex if they don't plan to procreate? But I'll leave that aside and let the people take it with them. So I had said I had one more question, but as you were speaking, a question came regarding the 8-year contraceptive that has now been introduced legally in Kenya. Could it have irreversible effects on the people taking it?
Well, the 8-year contraceptive device has ended up being the old Mirena. There was a hormonal contraceptive pill, hormonal contraceptive IUD called Mirena. What they have done is done studies to see if it would work longer. and they have discovered that it can actually prevent pregnancy for up to 8 years. So it's not a new gadget. It's still the same old one. The only reason they will change its name is probably just commercial, because it would cause confusion if you sell the same thing and say this one works for 5 years, but it can also work for 8 years. So they're changing the name so that it is it's really the same thing. It is not even changing. Even the hormone they're using, the amount of hormone in it is not changing. But now they have discovered it can work for longer. So it has always been available in the market, usually a little more expensive. So now they're saying they'll make it a little cheaper. As to whether it would cause irreversible fertility, it is those who are going to use it, who are going to be our guinea pigs. It is studying them that will help us to know. And in a few years, we'll have answers.
Have there been studies about Mirena?
Yes, Mirena has. Yeah, it has always been in the market. There is nothing conclusive about whether it is permanent or not. Most mothers, I've seen women where it is reversible. You remove it and they would conceive. So we don't know if there is anything new. The thing is, as a doctor, I give you the options. And once you make your decision, then you carry your cross.
Yes, and thank you so much for being an ethical doctor, because that is what it means to be an ethical doctor.
Yeah.
The last question, and I thank you so much for joining us today. What dangers come with believing that African families should be smaller when historically our strength has come from large families and community structures?
Well, the first is that the smallest number of children that any family can get to just sustain population has already been worked out to be at least 3 to 4 children. And it is because not every child who is born will survive to become an adult for many reasons. And not every child might want to have children. So that those who have children should be encouraged to have as many as they would wish to have and take care of. Now, when you tell us that large families are a problem, and we watch you in Europe, and we watch you with your old community, people are getting old. Fertility rate is below self-replacement. 1.6 children per woman, one child per woman, 1.6 children per woman, one child per woman. It is below replacement. We can see that the old people are having to work longer years because as they go to retire, there is nobody to replace them. We are seeing the economy is collapsing because all of a sudden you have worked very hard. You decided not to have children, you saved up a lot of money, and now you want to retire and eat your money. Then you discover that money is generated by people. So the money you saved should have been put to use by other people. They should have used that wealth to produce more wealth so that you can have some returns in old age. They are not there. Therefore, even what you get in retirement must be reduced for the economy to be able to sustain. You cannot survive without posterity. You cannot survive as a community without children. Any community without children is dead, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to be told that. So the next time you see children playing around, the next time you hear children crying, the next time you hear somebody's child playing in the background, thank God, because it means your community is alive. The day that cry stops, the day that laughter stops, is the end of that community. Now, why should we have children, Nduko? They require a lot of attention. We have to work very hard to keep them in school, to feed them. Why not just forget about them and enjoy ourselves? Why is it that we need to have children? And there are just two things that are very important. Number one is that you can fall sick, or you can grow very old. And in both times, you will need somebody to help you. You cannot send your dollar to the shop to go and bring you food. You will need somebody's child to go and buy you that food and bring to you. You will need somebody to nurse you. You need somebody to take care of you during the time you are sick. That is what community was. You help me when you're strong and you're energetic, you help. And when you're old and sickly, we help. That's how it works. It's just the way it is. That's what humanity is about. Now, both growing very old and needing assistance and growing sick are worse than death. If you have not been engaging in community activities, if people call you for their festivals and you don't go, if people call you when somebody is sick and you don't go, if people need help with an old person and you don't help, if you're not helping your old parents, it will come back to you. It will eat you. Because when your turn comes, the community will not come. You can't survive without the community. Ubuntu is real.
I am so grateful for you today. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad you connected it to Ubuntu. That was your last statement. Ubuntu is real. Dr. Wahome's words, a community without children is dead. To my African people around the world, do you want to be dead? Do you want to be a dead community? Let that be the question that helps you make the decisions based on the information you learned today. Asante sana, Dr. Wahome. Have a restful evening and all the best with the work that you're doing. All of you who want to, let me just put up the website real quick. For those of you who want to learn about Dr. Wahome, more about Dr. Wahome and what he's doing in his medical practice in Kenya, that is the website, www.mercymedicalcenter.co.ke. And this is center the English way. So it's MERCYMEDICALCENTRE.co.ke. Visit the website because, as he said, he's going to improve on the slides that he presented and put them on the website so that those of you who are running communities, those of you who are homeschooling, those of you who are running African grounded and building African grounded education systems can use those slides to build curriculums, to have this as one of the things we bring back in our community. Dr. Wahome, do you have any last words before we close?
I think my last words would be that Africa, let's look within. We have what it takes to solve our problems. Let us stop crying anymore. Let us stop complaining anymore. Let us look from within what is available to us, what is affordable to us. Let us use those things to develop ourselves. We have sufficient resources if only we would focus and unite.
Asante sana, asante sana. To everyone, asanteni. Have a good weekend. Weekend in Njema. And the language I'm using again is Kiswahili. Now we are pushing for it to be known as Kiubuntu because we are renaming ourselves. We are not allowing our colonialists, including the Arab colonialists who named the land in the eastern side of Nsi Ubuntu Swahili land, Swahili, and therefore the people there Swahili. We are taking that, putting it to the side and saying we want to name this language that we created ourselves, and it is Kiubuntu. It is the language of the people of Ubuntu, and therefore Kiubuntu, all right? And that's the language I use when I speak on Kumbukeni. Asanteni, siku njema, kwaherini.